to the Jay Kim Show, Hong Kong's first dedicated podcast on investing in Asia. Join us as we survey the land and discover the greatest companies and most profitable investment opportunities in Asia. If this is your first time listening, thank you for stopping by. This podcast is produced every week with the goal of providing actionable insights to you, the listener, with every single episode. And now, onto the show.
Hey podcast listeners, just a quick reminder, my company Explorer Equity Group will be hosting the Hong Kong Regional Finals for the StartCon pitch for $1 million competition. StartCon is Australia's largest startup and growth event that is taking place at the end of November down in Sydney, and the winner of the grand prize will be awarded a $1 million term sheet from Right Click Capital. So if you're a startup founder, I strongly urge you to apply for a chance to pitch at the Hong Kong event on October 16th at the beautiful Campfire Collaborative Space in Tai Koo. The winner of the Hong Kong pitch will receive free flights and accommodations and a chance to pitch on the main stage for the grand prize of $1 million at the end of November down in Sydney. We'll be working with Startup Grant on the event, and in addition to seeing the pitches, you'll also have access to investors and keynote speakers. Also, if you aren't a startup or an entrepreneur, but you're an investor or you're simply interested in the startup ecosystem here in Hong Kong, I also urge you to sign up for the event. For more information, head on over to www.startcon.com/pitch and click on the Hong Kong event page for more information. Okay, let's get on to the show. This week's show guest is Roger Haenni, serial entrepreneur, co-founder, and CEO of Datum, a distributed database governing safe exchange and trade of data. Datum allows individuals to take ownership of their information so they can share it with businesses on their own terms. Roger, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. So I've been, I've been slowly trying to do more research into blockchain and this sort of thing. And, luckily we had the chance to meet and chat not too long ago at the Startup Grad event. And so I thought it was a perfect opportunity for me to ask you to come on the show because I think that the project that you're working on is quite interesting. And also you are a practitioner within the field of blockchain, and you've been doing it for quite some time, which I don't know if I can say the same for a lot of the projects out there. Anyway, Roger, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, so my name is Roger Haenni. I'm one of the three co-founders and also the CEO of Datum. And so we set out to build Datum last year, around June. We then did a token sale to raise the funding. And what we're trying to achieve is to give everyone their own digital identity. And when I talk about identity, we don't focus on kind of only the basics like, get your passport attached to your identity, but we see this more as something like your Facebook or Google account, which in fact is mostly used to attach other data to it so that apps and services can exchange this data and access this data. And we don't think it's right that, these large companies are basically controlling all the data that gets attached to these accounts. And we felt that blockchain really presented a unique opportunity to actually try and provide a decentralized alternative. And so that's what we're trying to do with Datum. Technically, it's really two things. The first thing is a decentralized data store. So you can't just store this data on Facebook or Google servers anymore. There needs to be a decentralized storage network. And then the second part is a data trading protocol. So we define how you attach value to data, how do you define data, and then make it easy among developers to exchange and share this data. And all of this is controlled by you as an individual. And as a result of this, companies can also cut you into any profit that is made from your data. So when the data gets monetized, you can get a share of it.
Got it. Okay. So data nowadays, and especially data privacy and this sort of thing is quite a hot topic, and it's much talked about right now. And so I think that this is quite a timely time for you to come and share the project that you're working on. Before we really dig into to the specifics of how your company or your project company works, maybe you could give a little bit of background on yourself as a entrepreneur and how you got into the whole blockchain, the blockchain scene to begin with.
Yeah, sure. So I dropped out of college to start a sort of web design agency. That was just before the internet bubble. And I did that for 2 3 years very successfully. At that point, all companies needed a website. And that was just the time when dynamic websites were coming up. So I quickly focused on doing that. We were primarily using something called Cold Fusion. That was sort of a commercial precursor of PHP or ASP. And I quickly got into co-founding a financial information portal. So a website where investors could get real-time streaming quotes. And that was only available on Bloomberg terminals at that time. And in some markets, the US, there were some websites where investors could access quotes. But in Switzerland and in Europe, where I was based, there wasn't really much available. So I did that for a few years. Then I also co-founded online PC and component store in Switzerland, and then that grew to one of the largest independent e-commerce websites in Switzerland. And after that, I really focused on doing early mobile apps. So those were the days when web was just introduced. So those were like kind of black and white browsers on the phone, and the first apps could be developed. So I did that for quite a long time. And then during that time, towards the end of it, so around end of 2013, I basically started looking into Bitcoin and more specifically Litecoin and all these altcoins that were starting to pop up. So I've been following Bitcoin for a bit, but didn't really see frankly much potential in it at that time. But what interested me was when the prices started moving up, and there were all these altcoins being spawned off of Litecoin, right? So people would fork Litecoin, change the name, and try to create a community around that. So Dogecoin is an example of that, which was very successful, but there were many others. I remember one was simply a China coin, and the premise was clear, right? So it's going to be the coin for China. And so I dabbled during that time in basically adapting mining pool software for these altcoins, and also doing some mining pools that could switch to the most profitable altcoin, and also kind of focused on basically just exploiting the dynamic at that time in the market, which was that if you mine the coin in its very early days or even hours, you could mine at a very low difficulty and get lots of coins. And at that time, the listing criteria on for example, Poloniex was simply that, you needed to have a Bitcoin talk thread, and it needed to be more than like 5 sentences on there. So it was very easy for those coins to get listed, right? And ultimately a market was created, and you could sell these coins at a profit. And I did a lot of cloud mining at that time, which simply meant you would spin up like literally hundreds and sometimes thousands of cloud instances, so servers on Amazon, for example, just for 1 or 2 hours. Which is actually then not that expensive, and since you can mine so easily in the first few hours, right? You could basically get a lot of coins, and then basically later sell them off. And that was also the time when Ethereum was created. So some of these projects were of course larger than just doing a fork and changing the name. And but I kind of, so I totally missed Ethereum, and I kind of got out of the space when the price went down and sort of flatlined, right? So I think Bitcoin went to above $1,000 together with lots of these altcoins. And then in early 2014 or so, it kind of went down to $200 or even lower, and just kind of flatlined there. And after a few months, I thought, this is kind of not going anywhere.
Right.
So and then I did the 2 other startups in the meantime before then starting Datum. Those were kind of IoT focused things. So one was a Fitbit for babies, and the other was sort of a Bluetooth mesh sensor network. And then beginning of last year, I really felt like, wow, so Ethereum was gathering lots of steam. And then not just in the price action, but also in terms of, projects kind of starting to form on top of Ethereum. And as part of these IoT startups, so specifically with this Fitbit for Baby project, we had this big pain point that we were collecting very sensitive medical data, and then on top of it, it was from babies. And we tried to start to sing, and we collected over 1 million data points with some kind of prototype devices. And we tried to start selling this data. And the big question was, well, okay, so where does this data come from? Did the parents give consent for this data to be sold? Out of this really developed this a kind of problem that, hey, why isn't there a solution where I as a developer don't have to take so much care, right, about the data? So of course the data should be protected, but why do I have to kind of develop all this stuff myself? And there were, of course, solutions, for example, specific for medical data, and very expensive kind of data warehousing solutions where they would handle all the kind of compliance for you. But they didn't address the user side at all. So they didn't give back any rights to the user, right? Or made sure that the user understood what's happening. And that's really how the idea for Datum developed, right? So we're saying, hey, why isn't there a data store where I as user can actually own my data and I can delegate access to this data as I see fit? So, it's not Apple deciding who gets access to the health kit data that your phone is collecting, but it's really you that can decide that, right? And if there is a service or a developer that does a mashup of services that needs some data, and you feel that service provides value, it should be you deciding, right, if you want to give permission for that to happen or not. And then also very importantly, again, this notion that it's really users that are creating a lot of the data nowadays, and the users should be rewarded for this. It's just not right that, this is a commonly understood thing, right? I mean, in terms of Facebook and Google, you are really the product, right? So whenever you're getting stuff for free, you are probably in the end the product. And we just felt there was an opportunity there to try and see if we could change that a bit.
Okay, so it sounds like you certainly went after, I guess it was, like you said, a pain point from when you were doing your Fitbit for babies. But also, this is quite a, it's quite a sort of a hot topic right now, particularly after sort of Facebook and the Cambridge Analytica, this whole data scandal, and people are more in tune now with the fact that your data is out there, right? So now, specifically with Datum, maybe we can talk a little bit about exactly what the business model is, what the offering is of this service. How does a consumer, like, what's the user experience? Someone like myself, if I were to engage and want to basically sell my data, how would Datum help facilitate that?
Yeah, so basically you can download our data map, and at the moment this is just kind of sort of an MVP. But ultimately, this will be the app that you can use to manage your digital identity, and then also the data that is attached to that. And we're trying to get to the point where Datum is like your login with Facebook or login with Google alternative. So that means any developers that are building apps can use our APIs to access your data, of course, with your previous permission. And again, the big difference is that not even us as Datum have access to your data. It's really just you controlling this, right? And if you're sharing data with some other company, that data goes directly only to that company. There's no middleman in the middle that has access to this. And then in terms of actually monetizing this data, of course, that mainly falls to the developer, right? So developers are building services. They may be collecting data on you and all their other users, and they may aggregate this data and find someone who is willing to pay something for this data. And of course, the simple example is the advertisement sector. If you're building an app, for example, for a specific niche of users, it's usually easy to find some value in the data of your user base. By selling this to advertisers, they can use this for targeting, right, and really kind of find the people or the leads that they want, and they're happy to pay quite a lot for that, actually. So even in our MVP app, we have two data sources that you can add. One is basically background location data, and the other is a general kind of sort of Datum profile that has some of your interaction with the Datum community embedded. So that means if you participate in our token sale or were active on our Telegram, things like that, And just to give you an idea of the value of this data, so the location data is already aggregated at very large scale by many apps, but that data is really not worth that much. It's only about 10 US cents per month that an advertiser pays to get someone's individual location data, or ultimately, use that for targeting, versus your Datum profile with your email attached. So we're paying out up to about $5 to the most qualified users just to receive one single promotional email from an advertiser. And as a user, if you look at this, and I had asked you without giving you values before, like, what do you think is more valuable, right? So your whole location history of a whole month, so every single place that you visited, or receiving one email. And I think, most users would say, well, my location data sounds pretty sensitive, so I would assume that's pretty valuable. Right. But it's just an example of when we're talking about data, it's often quite difficult to assess the real value of data. And ultimately, you have to look at what insights and actions can be taken on data. And that's actually why just receiving one promotional email is so much more valuable, because that's what the advertiser really wants to do. And the location data is just an additional data set that helps them target you. And so this is what we're building. And of course, in the future, we are onboarding our first initial development partners now, who are basically using our SDK, building their own apps on top of it. And all this data is attached to your one Datum identity. And that creates a very interesting profile about you for advertisers. And of course, that's the same that Facebook and Google have. But what we do differently is that all this data is in your own control. So you can completely opt out of any advertising or any data sharing, or you can opt in, right, for specific cases or on a blanket permission basis. That's basically up to you.
So this, like you said, this is actually a very strong use case for being a blockchain technology, for having this basically a decentralized database that you guys yourself at Datum .org cannot even access. So in theory, it's like a remove third party, and the trust issue is taken care of that way, because it's not some listed company like Facebook that has access to all this data. This is a third party, kind of locked, like a vault. It's locked up there. And then so once this gets developed, how will it work? It'll basically be, say, advertisers will be paying Datum to access this data, and then data will then flow that compensation onto the end user?
Yeah, correct. So, but they're not paying Datum as a company, right? So that's also decentralized through our smart contract. So basically, they can go in and say something like, I want to have 1,000 users that are based in Washington, D.C., and they can see that these users are available, right? But they don't know who the actual users are. And then they can basically buy this targeting data through our smart contract. So again, there is no intermediary. And then each user gets individually rewarded for that. And then when the developers come into play, so let's say you're building an app or a game, so you can basically ask your users if they want to opt in to have data, whatever data you collect on them, attached to their Datum identity. And again, advertisers can use that to narrow down their targeting. And then if that data from that specific app or game is being used, the developer can take a cut of this data proceeds, of the data sales, and the other cut he can basically give to you as a user, which creates an extra incentive for you as a user, an extra reward, right, for using this app. And so a good example are, for example, all these free weather apps, right? Because those are the ones that actually have these location SDKs integrated that basically constantly monitor your location and send it to ad networks. And of course, when you installed this weather app initially, it asked you, well, can I get access to your location? And you probably said yes, because you were, well, it's a weather app, so obviously I want the weather of my current location, so sure. But you don't know that is happening, right? And you don't get rewarded for that. And so that's really what we're going after.
Okay, so quite interesting. So you're in the process now of basically curating developers to come on and build apps on top of the Datum, basically the Datum database, so to speak.
Yeah.
How do you? What is that process like? How do you? Is there? I mean, there must be some sort of quality control as far as when you have developers come on. Is there any risk of breaching or hacking into the customer database. I mean, in my mind, look, conceptually, this is Roger. It's a very good idea, something that actually has a real practical application to be on the blockchain. But of course, with data, there's always, the biggest concern is sort of privacy and breach and hacking and this sort of thing. So,
Sure.
how do you feel about that? What measures have you
Yeah.
put in place?
So there's two aspects to that, right? So first on the security aspect, so where we completely differ from a normal centralized database is that each data record is encrypted with a unique key. So not there's not one key for your datum identity. Literally each piece of data, a random password is created that is used to encrypt this piece of data. And then when the data sharing happens, you are basically encrypting that specific password against the public key of someone who should be able to access this. So it could be a developer or a data buyer. So it creates kind of a one-to-one encrypted channel where the data flows through, and that channel only exists for that specific piece of data. Now, that is very different from your average centralized database, because there you have something like a firewall and you have this huge database behind. And either someone hacks it from the front, right? So they hack through your firewall and other protections. Many times administrators just leave a default password and things like that, right? And that's how these large data breaches happen, right? So like Equifax lost like over 100 million social security numbers, basically of every third American. And so something like this can't really happen in our system because each record is individually encrypted, and then there's no kind of central store for all of these passwords, right? Everything happens on a one-to-one basis on one piece of data. Now, the other things around data privacy, that's also really critical because companies now have to comply with the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation in the European Union. And the US and Australia, many other countries have similar laws, right? And these laws are only getting stricter and stricter. So that means developers also have to take care about the whole legal aspect. So they have to get the proper consent from you, and they have to take a lot of kind of reasonable technical measures to actually protect this data, right? So in the future, it's not going to be okay in the case of Equifax, right, to just say, well, it's like, we were unlucky, like our database got hacked, right? So you're going to have to prove, well, did you guys actually take, all the necessary steps to protect this data? And so with the tech that we're building, right, we're basically doing all of this for the developers so that developers can basically build, sort of, or use personal user data in a GDPR compliant way, and compliant with many other data privacy laws without having to build out all this kind of mundane infrastructure themselves.
Right. Well, Roger, it's a very interesting project you're working on, and I think it's, like I said, it's one of the real practical use cases of blockchain. On that same token, I want to ask you and talk a little bit about sort of the whole space in general. You guys successfully you launched an ICO towards the end of last year, and it was a success. And I feel like in the last sort of 6 to 9 months, the entire blockchain crypto space has evolved. It's gone from sort of this very hyped up type space to now where people are kind of because the prices have come down and this sort of thing. People are kind of like, oh well, I don't know, it sounds kind of scammy. ICOs are kind of have a negative connotation to them attached to projects now. And then there's also the issue of, because there's money and quick money that can be raised via ICOs, a lot of these projects are reverse engineering things that don't necessarily need to be on the blockchain. And this is something that we had a discussion on this last time we met up. So I wanted to just hear your thoughts in general, and this will be for the benefit of people that aren't in blockchain or in crypto or aren't practitioners like yourself. What are your thoughts in general on sort of, where are we in sort of inning number 1 or 2 of 11, 12 inning game here? That's, it sounds like prices have run ahead of actual sort of real use cases on a lot of these projects and this sort of thing. So I'm just curious of your general thoughts on sort of the entire space as being someone that's working on a project in it. What sort of broad strokes can you give to someone that, say, is just jumping into crypto right now?
Sure. So, I mean, first of all, I would say, as you already mentioned a bit, like blockchain is not the cure for all, right? And actually, when you look at these projects, like what is essential for me is to identify if using blockchain or some sort of decentralization, or even if it's just a token or financial aspect, like what value add does that bring to the pain point or the solution that the projects have. And the reason I say that is because blockchain, for example, from a development perspective, it's like the most horrible development platform ever, right? So every time basically you call a function in a smart contract, you have to pay money for it. So imagine, your programming language charges you every time you call a function, and that's literally how it is. And so, I think end users are not really willing to accept any shortcomings in the user experience. And if you have done any sort of Bitcoin or Ethereum transactions, you all know it takes a while to do a transaction. And so there's really huge challenges in terms of, providing an experience that is fit for the mass market. And so having said that, it's really important that blockchain really adds such a kind of killer argument or just makes your solution so much better that people are basically willing to put up with the other side, which is basically this bad user experience, right? And then if you look at the kind of classic killer use case of blockchain, which was basically payments, I mean, a lot of initial adoption was driven by people who wanted to have means of kind of anonymous payments, right? Outside of the existing fiat system. And of course, these people didn't mind that, it takes 5 minutes to do a Bitcoin transaction or to get sufficient amount of confirmations, and also didn't mind that it would cost them a few US dollars, right? Which doesn't make it very competitive to like, kind of modern mobile peer-to-peer payment offerings, right? And so, yeah, I think when looking at the projects and also the market in general now, it's really important to ultimately focus on, hey, so what are people actually using blockchain for, right? And I think right now we see kind of the first steps. Of course, we had CryptoKitties, right, which was a big success. But it's interesting to see now that actually the usage of CryptoKitties now is extremely small, right? And that is one of the few real things that Ethereum is being used for. And then just to talk about Ethereum, the most used dApp, so decentralized application on Ethereum, is probably IDEX at the moment. That's a decentralized exchange. And they do anything between like 5 to 10 million US dollars of volume per day, right, through that. But just compare that to an exchange like Binance or so, who does 1.5 billion in a day. And the reason, and one of the main reasons, is Binance just has a much better user experience, right? So as a decentralized exchange, IDEX is very slow. It always fails, right? This is the whole experience is not good. And that really shows in the usage numbers, right? So it's an order of magnitude different. And so I do think we have been in a bit of a hype cycle where we went far to advance into the future already, kind of hoping that all these problems would be solved by blockchain. And I think now there is a bit of phase of maybe disillusionment. So people are actually looking, okay, what is actually being used on the blockchain, and it's all kind of very basic, kind of I would still say kind of nerdy cryptocurrency stuff. So, if you look at EOS, the most used dApp on there is EOS Dice. It's basically what Satoshi Dice and other stuff was. It's a simple dice game on blockchain, right? It's basically gambling. And sure, that makes sense, but you got to kind of take a step back and say, hey, so what are people actually using this for? So, okay, it's some, kind of gambling or a dice game. And, so I'm not sure kind of when we're kind of really getting into the phase where we see some adoption at scale, but it's safe to say that right now with Bitcoin and Ethereum, there is massive challenges in scaling, and of course many projects are working on that, right, with the blockchains themselves. So Ethereum is trying to scale the blockchain itself through sharding and proof of stake and so on. Then the projects themselves, the ICOs, can do things like state channels or side chains and so on. But it's still really early days, right? And ultimately, you still need to solve a real pain point in the real world, and blockchain kind of needs to really radically, improve that to make sense. Because even with the most slickest user experience right now on blockchain, there will still be lots of shortcomings for the average end user, right? And I think so.
Absolutely.
Realistically, we're still, probably at least a year or two away. I would say till we really see a killer app on blockchain that really goes out of just kind of making anonymous payments.
Right, right, absolutely. So having gone through an ICO, successful ICO, and given the fact that we are sort of in this uh, somewhat of a confusion part of the cycle where people are kind of worried, and there's been a lot of scams and people don't know. If you were, say, a blockchain entrepreneur wanting to get into the space, and you wanted to run an ICO, what would be like a quick advice that you would give, other than don't do it? I think one of the things that you mentioned that was a benefit from your ICO, above and beyond, in fact, the money itself, was building that community, which essentially are sort of your early adopters, your early champions of the project that will help you scale right down the line. So.
Yeah, so I think that's a bit similar to like kind of when Kickstarter started. So if you did an ICO last year, right, you were still able to kind of gain lots of public traction. But realistically, right now, there's just too many ICOs around, and they start to raise less and less money in so-called public sales, right?
Right.
So already many months ago, a lot of the ICO market started shifting to more like private placements, right? So whether that's called private pre-sale or whatever, and they basically focus mostly on accredited investors. So
Right.
it changes the game completely, right? So it's much harder to build this initial community, and that's also a bit what happened on Kickstarter at some point, right? So when it started, like um, so kind of random projects with a great idea could, without doing any marketing themselves, just by the power of Kickstarter, right, find a few hundred or thousand people that would back a project. But nowadays, realistically, if you want to do something on Kickstarter as well, you have to put a lot into marketing, and that's no different with ICOs. And I think kind of this kind of era of really these large public ICOs seems a little bit over. It's just kind of getting too costly now to do the marketing for that, and many projects also realize that it's much easier to do this kind of private sale to accredited investors.
Right.
So that means we're almost kind of going back to more traditional venture capital structures. There's usually just a token involved as well, and some token economics. But then also what I'm seeing in the market is actually many of these kind of accredited investors and traditional VC and so on are basically asking for equity as well, right? So they're saying, well, look, this token thing is interesting, and your token economy may or may not make sense, right? Who really knows? There are many proven models that we can look at. So we also want some equity. It's probably more likely that you stumble upon solving some pain point and maybe able to monetize that in a more traditional way. Then really all of these projects creating these kind of self-sufficient token economies that actually work, and then also provide value back to token holders, right? And we're also so the market is heavily correlated at the moment, which means when Bitcoin and Ethereum goes down, many of these kind of projects go down as well. There's a few that can sometimes decouple, and there's kind of two main dynamics at play. So one I've been seeing a lot is this whole notion around staking, right? Where basically people can put up or buy a stake and then can earn some sort of revenue or dividend or whatever it is. And the other thing is that some projects are simply doing is that they found ways to monetize whatever they're building in a more traditional way, which means they just send an invoice somewhere and they make some money. And then they use parts of this money to buy back their own token and then burn these tokens, right? So the idea there is that with restricted supply, your token price may go up if there is demand. And I'm just interested to see I mean, if that becomes a very regular thing, it's not much different from running just a normal company and not really creating a token economy, right? Because you sort of have external revenues completely outside of the blockchain. You just take that fiat money and use it to buy back your own token. So I hope it's not going to end up that way, right? That's going to be the standard model. I do hope that we are going to see some more interesting token economics at play, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I also appreciate, Roger, your realism, because it's, I think there's a lot of extremes, especially within blockchain, and some people think that it's, the next best thing since sliced bread or whatever. But I mean, there is a real potential for this to become a token economy, and a lot of great things can happen. So hopefully it'll go that direction, and maybe not to the extreme that some of the people way out there are believing, the maximalists, but we shall see, I suppose. So as far as Roger, your goals for Datum in the next year, couple of years, what do you hope to achieve? Is there anything, any data points that you're particularly excited about that you'd like to share?
Yes, I mean it's always hard to project these kind of things, right? But we were able to build a community or actually acquire about 60,000 users on our web and mobile apps, and those were just kind of the MVP implementations. So within a year we're really looking to get to a million sort of scale user base. With people that have a Datum identity, that also then creates the important critical mass to make this really attractive for developers who want to easily onboard new users, and even better if these users come with very rich data profiles attached. So that's kind of sort of the kind of short-term goal. Like long-term, over a few years, we really hope will be one of the options or alternatives that you have if you basically don't want to give Facebook and Google all your data. And so it's really about having this self-sovereign identity and having all the data that should really belong to you attached and under your own control to this identity.
Right. So I want to let's look to wrap up here, but I wanted to ask you just a couple more questions. So this one's kind of fun, and you can answer it however you want. So I mean, people have said that within the crypto blockchain space, the time is sort of compressed or accelerated, whichever way you want to call it. But basically, 1 year is the equivalent of, I don't know, 5 years maybe in normal tech startup scene. So let's say in 4 years' time from now, what does the space look like? In addition to Datum being one of the leading, sort of applications out there, what does the landscape look like? Are we still looking at 1,000+ projects that are floating around that are still trying to become validate their use cases, or are we going to see sort of a consolidation? Is Bitcoin still going to be dominant? Is Ethereum still going to be around? What about the rest of the top 100 tokens out there? What does this all look like to you in 4 years' time, let's say?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, I think we're going to see literally hundreds of thousands of tokens, right? That's the whole point about tokenization. I mean, basically, you can take your apartment and tokenize it, right? And give shares out to everyone. So that I think is only going to scale up. In terms of the kind of like the larger projects. So now we're kind of in this early explorer phase, right? And I do think, some of the big incumbents will of course survive, but I do think in 4 years, it may very well be that, there is a new player only 1 year old that, just kind of learned from everything that the previous blockchains and projects did wrong and just manages to really disrupt, some of the big blockchains or tokens out there. So I would be very surprised if let's say top 20 on CoinMarketCap looks anything like it does now in 20 years or in 4 years, right? And I mean, for Bitcoin and Ethereum, I do think so those are the huge incumbents, right? And like Bitcoin is kind of used as a digital gold now, or kind of just store of value. And it's kind of a bit hard to dethrone that because you you can't really improve on that concept much more if everyone just keeps, believing or using Bitcoin for that purpose. But then when it comes to Ethereum and all these chains that actually, try to run dApps and provide utility, I mean, I'm still super bullish on Ethereum, but with all like EOS and Tezos and these other projects, right? So if you provide a much better experience, then by all means, I do think Ethereum could also be easily disrupted, right? And I would actually fully expect that to happen. Who knows with Ethereum, but definitely with many of the other chains, right? And if you look at the blockchain space itself, what happened over the last 3 years, I mean, a lot of the successful projects now are also iterations of previous experiments, right? So just look at the history of EOS, the projects that the EOS founders had done before, Steam it, right? And so these were like early iterations that are getting more refined, and I fully expect the same thing to happen. So in 4 years, Bitcoin may still be there in Ethereum, but I would otherwise think the top 20 on CoinMarketCap would look pretty different. And I do expect so if you look at the top 20 now, it's all kind of core infrastructure blockchains, right? But I do think that there is a place for kind of utility token that solve like, very general problems. I wouldn't be surprised to see a few actually kind of utility tokens be in that top 20 in about 4 years.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. But I mean, you're absolutely right, Raj. I mean, this sort of thing happens in tech all the time, right? Web 1.0, you had a slew of companies, and Web 2.0, they just improved upon it, and where we're at now, like we don't know. But I would tend to agree with you. I mean, other than I guess Bitcoin because of sort of the unique properties it has, everything else is fair game to be disrupted, right?
Yeah.
So as far as last couple questions, Roger, and thanks again for your time and for sharing the project. I mean, it's quite exciting what you're doing, and obviously we're looking forward to seeing the progress that you make. Second to last question is, again, if there's one piece of advice, I mean, you've basically been an entrepreneur in every single aspect of technology, I think, from sort of, web design to e-commerce to cryptocurrency and mining and even a little bit of telco type stuff. So you've pretty much seen the entire spectrum. If there's a piece of advice that you can give from your many years of entrepreneurship and building companies to a younger entrepreneur that maybe wants to get into blockchain or maybe just wants to get into tech and do a startup, what would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, so for me, it's really kind of focusing on the pain point and doing a lot of kind of customer discovery, right? So and that is an advice very widely given by many great accelerators and incubators as well, and we've been through a similar thing with Datum as well. Just try to find, before you even build something, basically you need to be able to find some customers, right? And if you can't convince someone to be a customer just basically off of your napkin drawing or a slightly more elaborate pitch, then there is a high chance it's not going to work. And then with something like blockchain, I see so many people that say, yeah, but once we build the solution, right, we can't like get the customers now or demo it now, right? So we have to build out the whole thing and then they will come. But if you try and do that in the blockchain space, you're in for hell, right? Because blockchain it tends to be much more complicated to develop on than other things. So you simply don't have the resources and time, right, to build out fully functioning stuff. So basically, early customer kind of discovery and kind of validating the pain point that you're trying to solve.
Right. That's sound advice for any type of entrepreneur that wants to break in and do their own company. Well, thanks again, Roger. Last question is basically where can people find you, follow you, learn a little bit more about Datum, and maybe even sign up for updates on your projects.
Yeah, sure. So we got our website at datum.org, and we're on Twitter at Datum Network, and we're also on Telegram at Datum Network. So that's where we can be found.
Fantastic. So we'll have that all linked up in the show notes. And once again, thanks for your time. And Roger, we're looking forward to to following and tracking your progress. I'm quite interested in what you do, and obviously, since you guys are somewhat based here in Hong Kong, I have a soft spot for my local Hong Kong comrades. So we hope to see some success coming out of your project. So thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care.
Thanks.
All right, bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. All the show notes and links can be found over at jkimshow.com. Come back often and make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Don't forget to join us next week for another exciting episode of The J Kim Show. I'd love to hear your comments. You can find me on Twitter at jkimmer, JAYKIMMER. See you guys next week. This podcast is brought to you by Hack Your Fitness, the high achiever's guide to getting ripped in under 3 hours a week. If you're anything like me, you're probably working a full-time job or jobs and trying to find time to balance family life, social life, and last but not least, fitness. Look, I get it. I'm a full-time investor and entrepreneur myself, and father of 2. So how am I able to stay fit year-round without spending hours and hours in the gym killing myself on the cardio machine? After struggling for the last 15 years trying every workout and diet under the sun, I finally designed a system that allows me to achieve and maintain single-digit body fat for life in under 3 hours a week. Cardio not required. Head on over to hackyour.fitness and download my free 13-page guide that teaches you the simple science behind efficient fitness and smart nutrition and gives you everything you need to know to finally take control of your life. That's hackyour.fitness.